Have you ever given everything to someone you love, the years, the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, and still felt invisible in their life? Have you ever poured your heart into someone only to realize that the person you trusted most is slowly letting someone else take your place? In this story, you're going to meet a mother who devoted her life to her son, who loved him beyond measure, and who silently protected him from the harsh realities of life. But what happens when the person you trusted to care for your child, the partner they choose, betrays not only you, but the family legacy you worked so hard to build? How do you recognize it? How do you respond? As you listen to the full story, you'll see how love can sometimes be mistaken for weakness, and how silence can become a tool of protection or a trap. You'll learn how this mother observed quietly, uncovered the truth, and planned carefully not out of anger, but to protect her family, her son, and the life they built together. If you've ever felt overlooked, disrespected, or betrayed in a family or personal relationship, this story will give you insights into how to respond, how to prepare yourself, and how to confront difficult truths without losing your own strength. Now, I want to ask you, have you ever experienced something like this? A moment when someone you trusted pushed you aside, or when you discovered hidden betrayals in your own family? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to know if this has ever happened to you and how you handled it. As you listen, keep asking yourself, what would I have done if I were in her shoes? I assumed that it was just another Sunday. The warm, gentle light streaming in through my kitchen window gave the walls a comfortable, almost forgiving sense. I had changed into a new blouse, made tea, and even switched on the nice lamp to improve the lighting. Nathan used to say that I looked exhausted because of the lights in my dining room. I made an effort to correct that, but he never appeared to care about it anymore. As the screen came to life, Nathan and Sienna were seated side by side at their modern Portland home's kitchen table. He grinned and waved. She gave a courteous nod, a grin tugging at her lips but never quite reaching her eyes. We discussed groceries, a new recipe I attempted, and nothing else of importance. Sienna hardly spoke, only adding anything when asked. I acted as though I was unaware. I was growing accustomed to acting. Nathan eventually excused himself to answer a call at work. He did not turn off the camera. If it were just the two of us, I stayed drinking my tea and hoped Sienna would open up. She was unaware that I was still present. She said, her voice fading in from off camera. I can't stand her. She simply inserts herself as though she is in control of everything. She will not return here. What Nathan says doesn't matter to me. I held my breath. I remained motionless. As she moved across the kitchen, I noticed the border of the frame where a shadow went by her form, perhaps pacing. After a little period of silence, she said, honestly, it's like having a second mother and not in a good way, as if to drive the point home. After a few minutes, Nathan returned and pretended nothing had happened, ending the video call. The remainder of it was spent grinning. Waving as though I hadn't just learned the truth, I declared my love for them. The text arrived that evening. Please give us a call before you come, Evelyn. That's the superior option. No explanation, no punctuation. I read it 3 times, twice. My throat constricted, not because I was angry, but rather because I recognized it. I had no idea how or when I had been invited into my son's home, but I will find out. The house became too quiet too quickly after Leo's death. The silence was heavy and unbroken, settling into the corners like dust. I advised Nathan not to return home immediately because he was only 21 years old at the time and was graduating from college on the East Coast. His father would have preferred that he maintain his concentration. I actually stated that aloud. I wanted desperately to keep his life going on the inside. I managed the funeral by myself even while mine came to a complete halt. By me, I laid my husband to rest. I maintained the business operating silently in the background by signing the papers and paying the invoices. I never gave them the opportunity, and nobody ever inquired if I needed assistance. I gave Nathan everything I had. The down payment for his first house was tuition and rent. I purchased him a fitted suit for his graduation and stood in the back of the auditorium as he shook hands with folks who had no idea how he got there. In the early years, I often skipped meals to keep the business afloat, but I never informed him how close I had come to selling the beach house. He owed me nothing, and I didn't want that. That was my guiding principle. I was hopeful the first time he brought Sienna home. She had all the qualities I believed Nathan needed in a partner. She was polished, articulate, and ambitious. She laughed at my old stories, complimented my cuisine, and asked me insightful questions. I thought she was nice. I thought she was sincere. I was unaware that the shift had started. It wasn't an abrupt change, but rather a gradual decline in space phone calls, shorter, optional holidays, and performative gifts. During talks in which I participated, she began using the third person to refer to me. "Did your mom say she was coming, Nathan?" I had a name, but for some reason that made me simpler to get rid of. I refrained. I kept things light. Being the obtrusive mother-in-law was not what I wanted. I reassured myself that tender affection would never be confused with dominance. But if no one is looking, love that is given tenderly can vanish entirely. And that's precisely what was taking place. Holidays missed were the beginning of it. The first Thanksgiving, they were attempting to keep things straightforward, according to Nathan. Sienna had reserved a couple's vacation in Sedona for Christmas. "It's like you need time to reset." I assured them that was all right. As though thoughtful calligraphy and gold ribbon might make up for the increasing lack of care, I even mailed presents ahead of schedule. Voicemails replaced phone calls. We read the texts, but we didn't respond. Days would go by without Nathan responding to my messages about new recipes or articles I thought he might enjoy. His response was brief, courteous, and surface level. "Regards, Mom. Hectic week. I'll give you a call shortly." He didn't. Once, I dropped by without warning. I convinced myself I was in the neighborhood. With that practice grin, tight, dazzling, and slightly icy, Sienna opened the door. She responded, "Oh," as she moved halfway outside to obscure the view inside. "You ought to have given a call. Nathan doesn't feel good. He's sleeping." I said, "I won't remain. I simply wanted to deliver some soup." She said, "Thank you," as if it were a burden, like she was saying goodbye. Later following week, she called me instead of Nathan. "I hope you get it, Evelyn. You always show up without warning, and Nathan has been under a lot of stress lately. He requires room. We shouldn't be surrounded by so many outside influences at the moment. External factors." As I listened to those comments in my own kitchen, I wondered when I had threatened my son's tranquility. "I understand," I answered. Was there anything else I should have said? I didn't let her know that now when I walked into a room, I would see Nathan's eyes on the floor, or how he showed her deference in even the simplest matters, such as what to eat, when to talk, and what was proper. I didn't say that I was no longer in any of the pictures on their walls. I didn't resist. Not quite yet. However, I observed the general outline of what was taking place. She wasn't requesting limits. She was erecting them permanently, high and wide, and Nathan was allowing her to pour the cement, whether he realized it or not. I had genuinely loved them both. I had to see the reality clearly now, though. Sienna used to discuss her work as if it were a kingdom she was subtly gaining. During dinners, she would casually mention it, saying things like, "I had to rework the entire project budget myself." Or, "When things get messy, Uber management always turns to me." Nathan would give her a proud look, and I would nod, smile, and politely follow up. She worked for the same construction company that my husband and I started from the ground up before he passed away, Moreno and Coprit. I became invisible after Leo died. I put Marcus in charge of day-to-day operations, reorganized the business under a trust, and vanished from the paperwork, at least the type that anyone looking at it superficially would care about. The name on the ownership documents was unknown to Sienna. She was unaware of who approved the vendor contracts she controlled, who examined each high-level recruit, and who approved the budgets. She was unaware that I owned the business. I never required praise. I required clarification. Following Leo's passing, I discovered that prominence made me a target, and riches made people eager. I pulled strings that no one knew I had, so I remained hidden. I observed, I paid attention, I let people be themselves. It was Sienna who had come out. Every time she locked me out of my own son's life and made me feel like a bother, she did it while cashing checks that I had given her permission, while establishing a way of life on a base I personally constructed. Reminding her would have been simple, just one sentence, one epiphany. I didn't, though, since I wanted to see what she had changed when she believed I had no control. I could see clearly now I would allow her to ascend, permit her to adorn her miniature throne, give her the impression that she was out scheming everyone in her vicinity. I wanted her to experience every inch of the fall when it was time to remove the rug, and that moment was approaching. The following morning, I gave Marcus Tron a call. He was our most trusted accountant, had been with Leo and me for more than 20 years, and was the only person other than me who was aware of the true ownership of the business. He was faithful and careful, and he had never questioned why I kept it a secret. "Marcus," I said steadily, "I want you to investigate one of ours." Quietly, he murmured, "Give me a name," without asking why. "Moreno, Sienna." A pause occurred. "Then wait a week for me." He didn't require that much time. We sat in my sunroom 4 days later, holding a folder so thick it hurt my palms. Vendor contracts from obscure shell suppliers businesses that didn't exist 2 years ago and whose charges much surpassed the market norm were included in purchase orders with exaggerated numbers. The most damaging expenditure reports were those that mentioned client meetings in Napa Valley and Aspen are arranged to coincide with lengthy weekends. Marcus remarked that she is intelligent yet careless. I hardly heard him as I nodded. Every time I turned a page, a fragment of the mask she was wearing fell away. The same woman who accused me of being unruly had no problem embezzling money from the company that funded her imported wine tastings and marble worktops. The digital trail was another. Under a fictitious identity, I made a burner social media account and monitored Sienna's work profile. The carefully chosen captions were self-explanatory, swinging more forcefully this quarter. "Not everyone waits to be selected. We construct ladders on our own." In one post, she was tagged with a potential rival at a business meeting for which I never authorized travel. I read one email that was forwarded to me anonymously. "I'll be in charge sooner than most people think if I have the correct contacts and power." She wasn't merely acting. She was scheming and using my money to accomplish it. I remained silent. I didn't go up against her, not quite yet. This was no time for anger or showy actions. Information was at issue. Complete damning, quiet, because this was more than simply conceit. Fraud wasn't the only thing involved. It was theft of family, standing, and trust, and I had worked too hard to allow someone like her to destroy both without my intervention. I shut the folder and turned to face Marcus. "Thank you," I said. "I now understand exactly what she's trying to say and how to respond to her." I hadn't passed through the corridors of Moreno & Co. as more than just a name on a paper in more than 10 years. The bones of the place were still there, but the faces were younger and more ravenous now. She was unaware that it was my company, which Leo and I had developed with nothing but perseverance and late hours. Marcus made all the arrangements. I was introduced as a strategic advisor from the ownership trust in a brief internal memo. Just enough formality to keep people guessing and enough ambiguity to keep Sienna off balance. No title, no explanation. I began discreetly asking department heads for vendor audits, cost analysis reports, and updated project pipelines. I wrote thoughtful notes, smiled, and frequently asked gentle questions. Nobody, certainly not her, noticed what I was doing. Sienna was all poise and polish when she finally entered the conference room for our planned appointment. She had a fitted jacket, well-groomed nails, and a warm smile. She held out her hand and said, "Evelyn, finally, we get to meet in person." "Nice to give the emails a face," I said, shaking her hand. Hers was stiffly controlled, yet warm. Taking the seat opposite from me, she added, "I heard you've been sitting in on some of the ops meetings, just trying to understand the rhythm of things, get a clearer picture of how the pieces move." She opened her iPad and nodded. "I'd be pleased to show you my current portfolio. 3 of the 5 projects I oversee are nearing completion." I gave her space to speak. She talked about timetables, deadlines, team dynamics, and numbers. She enjoyed being heard. Holding the floor was something she enjoyed. At one point, I replied, "You must feel overburdened." With all that responsibility, she smiled half-heartedly. "It's difficult, but I do well under duress." I leaned a little. "Have you ever considered launching your own business?" Her gaze wavered. "Yes, in fact, I've been thinking about it. Here, I've developed several positive relationships. I know which customers have faith in me. The proper opening is the only thing lacking." I grinned. You look good with ambition. It was a compliment to her. She was completely unaware that she had just acknowledged preparing my clients for her next move. After niceties, the meeting came to a close. I left knowing that she had shown me exactly where to cut, and she left believing that she had impressed me. One afternoon, I invited Nathan to join me for coffee, neutral territory. I picked a peaceful cafe that we frequented during his high school years. Back when we didn't have to tiptoe over glass to talk, he appeared worn out or perhaps simply preoccupied. After giving me a cheek kiss, he sat down and continued to browse through his phone until I cleared my throat. I started thinking about how far away everything seems these days. His smile was cautious. Sienna and you simply need more time. She's not attempting to be impolite. She simply keeps to herself. Private? We are now referring to it by that name. I gave a nod. Perhaps, but I have a question for you and I want an honest response. He paused. All right, do you consider me to be bothersome? Do you think I'm bothering you when I phone or come over? He stroked his thumb over his ring while glancing down at his hands. There was a long pause. I believe he spoke slowly. Sienna and you don't always understand one another. You're from various places. That isn't a response. He didn't raise his head. I watched as he stumbled over what to say, or just the most secure option. I could see the stiffness in his shoulders as he folded inward, away from her and away from me, and into a tranquil place where he wouldn't have to make a decision. He hadn't picked her instead of me. I understood that much. Silence has repercussions, and he had decided to keep quiet. I relaxed, drained my coffee, and shifted the conversation. I was aware that there was no need in pushing. Not quite yet. Not while he was still making a valiant effort to think everything was fine. However, something was, and he would soon be able to witness it for himself. Every senior staff member was sitting waiting at a long table, and the boardroom was silent as I strolled in the sunlight. Folders were carefully arranged in front of Marcus, who was already there. I gave a single nod and sat down at the head. I said, "Thank you all for coming. We won't have much time today, but there are issues that must be resolved, issues that are fundamental to this business." I slid the first folder forward and opened it. Here I mentioned our records of payments approved to Hartwell Logistics, a supplier who does not have a physical office, has no tax ID history before last year, and charges more than 40% more than usual rates. There was a rustle of paper. I went to another folder. This is the acquisition of a private condo in Lake Go that was listed under the name of a consulting business that was established 3 months prior. Invoices from that company show up here as chargeable project expenses. The vendor registration paperwork in the third folder are signed by a person who is not legally permitted to represent Moreno & Co. Sudtu. I raised my head. Now everyone except one eye was on me. Sienna moved in her chair but maintained her stance. "These are grave accusations," she stated calmly. "My lawyers will probably be hearing from yours." I looked over at her. "You lied to my son and used my name and company." She stopped. Seated slightly to the left of the center, Nathan blinked as though the room had just flipped upside down. "Mom," he muttered, "what is this?" I gave him a friendly glance. "That's the reality. Everything. And I waited until I had run out of time for you to see it for yourself." Sienna stood up straight. "It's a personal matter. Due of familial matters, you are retaliating. The authority does not belong to you." "I do," I said. "I always have." I got up. "Sienna, you work for me. And you don't?" Now. No yelling was heard. Nobody made a move. There was only the sound of breath being held and a disbelieving quiet. The mask she had worn so effortlessly started to crumble in that silence. Silently, Sienna walked out of the business. Just a resignation letter that was approved by legal and a formal report filed for financial misconduct. No lawsuit, no statement. That day in the boardroom was the last time I saw her. Nathan remained in his house for some time. He didn't say much in the house where I helped him. I said even less. He moved across the river to a one-bedroom rental a few weeks later after packing his bags. Just a text, with no explanation. "I require room." Once, early in the morning when the kitchen light was still a memory, he stopped by. He appeared older and thinner. "I'm not sure how to feel," he said. "I had no idea that you had been observing everything and paying for my life." I gave him a cup of coffee. "You were aware of what you had to do. Your love shouldn't have felt like a deal to me." He kept his hands off the cup. "However, why didn't you reveal your true identity to me?" I looked him in the eyes. "Because I wanted you to see her true self first." He gave a hesitant nod, as though he already knew the answer and detested it. After a few minutes, he departed. There was only a silent guy bearing the burden of all that had gone wrong. No embrace. No rage. I made no attempt to stop him. In order for someone to reconstruct themselves without delusion, you may need to let them break, and sometimes we wait too long to speak out loud about the harshest realities. I persuaded myself that I did it to keep him safe. And that's largely accurate. However, I can now acknowledge the rest in the silence that has ensued. I hoped she would sense it. Not simply the repercussions, the humiliation, the shame of being discovered by someone she didn't think was important. Who exactly had taken the earth out from under her was something I wanted her to know. Although I didn't like it, I also didn't stop it, and I have no regrets about it. Nathan is gradually getting better. He began going to treatment. He became a member of the communal garden. He is courteous, neutral, and sends me brief texts, check-ins, and updates. It's been months since we had a meaningful talk. Now, there are rifts between us. Little cracks that might never heal. Furthermore, I'm not sure if I improved or worsened them. I occasionally sit by the window late at night and question whether I went too far. When does control turn into protection? At what point does quiet become coercion? Did I spare my son a life of dishonesty? Or did I simply deny him the ability to solve it for himself? And would I have lost him anyhow if I had said nothing?